Okay, everybody, so today we're going to be going through the story of the Little Red Hen. So, just a little bit of context for, well, what of course we'll be reading here, what to be looking out for. It's solely a story about creating and consuming. Now, as we move forward, and as we have moved forward in the world technology-wise, there's always been, and there will probably always will be, this difference between where we all are on the scale of creator and consumer. And I think this is going to be pretty important as we move into a world of increasing technology, thinking about particularly things like AI, because if, of course, the age of abundance, as it might be called, comes about, then there will be more than anyone could even imagine to consume, let's say, because of how much creation there will be of those things. And so the wonderful thing, which hopefully we'll see as we go through the story in a moment, is that choice is key within this. We actually all have a choice as to where we want to be on that scale. And it is important to think of it as a scale, because you're not just a consumer, you're not just consuming things all day, and you're not just a creator, you're not just creating things all day. Many people will be very skewed to either edges of the scale, but I think, as hopefully we'll see, the middle, or somewhere in the middle of that scale might be the optimum. So, let us begin. The Little Red Hen. Once, on a small farm at the edge of a quiet village, there lived a little red hen. She shared the farm with 3 other animals, a dog, a cat, and a duck. The dog loved lying beneath the oak tree, watching the clouds drift across the sky. The cat spent most of her days stretched beside the warm kitchen window. And the duck enjoyed floating peacefully across the pond, rarely thinking beyond the next meal or afternoon nap. They were not cruel animals. They simply preferred comfort. One morning, while scratching through the soil, the little red hen discovered several grains of wheat. She examined them carefully and began to imagine what they could become. Perhaps they could be planted. Perhaps they could grow into wheat. And perhaps, eventually, the wheat could become a warm loaf of bread for everyone on the farm. The hen carried the grains back to the others, and she said, "Who will help me plant this wheat?" The dog opened one eye. "Not I," he said. "The ground looks rather hard." "Not I," said the cat. "I have only just found a comfortable place to sit." "Not I," said the duck. "The pond is especially peaceful today." "Then I will," said the little red hen. So I think here is a good point to even talk a little bit about, of course, this introduction and scenario that we find ourselves in. It's not really a big problem, let's say, that the dog, the cat, and the duck are enjoying, well, what they're doing in the moment, let's say. The duck in particular having a peaceful moment by the pond. In fact, I would argue that's a good thing, right? It's important for that to happen. But of course, as you see, well, almost the characterization in this story of these 3 animals and then the red hen, they each obviously have their own particular goals, let's say, as they move through the story. And the dog refusing to do it because the ground looks hard is different to the cat refusing to do it because it's comfortable which is different again to the duck refusing to do it because it's a peaceful time that the duck wants to have. And each of them, of course, is touching on a particular act of living. The dog doesn't want to do hard work, the cat likes to be comfortable, and the duck is enjoying a peaceful moment. So it's three different, particular scenarios that might indeed lead to somewhat would call a type of consumption. They are not producing anything doing that, they are consuming it, whether it's the world around them, whether it's the ease that they find themselves in, or of course the comfortableness. But anyway, back to it. So, the little red hen walked to the field, dug into the earth, and planted each grain and carefully covered them with soil. The work was tiring. Her feet became muddy, and the afternoon sun grew warm above her. When she finished, she returned to the farm and rested with the others. Over the following weeks, the hen watered the soil and removed the weeds. Slowly, small green shoots appeared. The dog sometimes watched her from beneath the tree. The cat occasionally glanced through the window, and the duck saw her as he floated around the pond. They all thought the growing wheat looked beautiful, but none of them offered to help. Eventually, the wheat grew tall and golden. It moved in the wind like waves beneath the sunlight. The little red hen gathered the others once again and said, "The wheat is ready. Who will help me harvest it?" The dog once more stretched his legs. "Not I. Harvesting looks exhausting." The cat yawned. "Not I. The wheat is far too dusty." The duck shook his feathers. "Not I. I have never been particularly interested in farming." "Then I will," said the hen. She entered the field and cut down the wheat herself. Bundle by bundle, she carried it back to the barn. Her wings ached, and the work took much longer than she expected. But when she looked at the harvested wheat, she felt something deeper than simple pleasure. She felt meaning and purpose. The wheat existed because she had chosen to act when it had been easier to rest. Now that's one of the key lines. Obviously, as we'll continue in a moment, but we can see here once again the same kind of repetition of the other animals deciding to keep consuming what they are. And of course the little red hen is clearly the producer here, but what's more interesting is that the little red hen in the middle of this went back and rested with the others after the first day, or however long it would be. Now that's key, because that means that during that period of time, the little red hen was not producing. The little red hen was actually consuming then with the others, and this is the key. There is a scale to this, and you have the choice as to where you are going to be on that scale. And I would argue, as we talked about on many other videos here on this channel, that you will find far more meaning and purpose, as the story said, in your life if you are also producing things alongside your consumption. Now, of course, there are some people out there which will completely just produce all day, every day. Like they just produce, and then they'll sleep, and that's it. And, of course, you can all probably imagine or think of someone like that. You might know them, maybe not, but there's definitely people that are, for instance, famous because of that. They are purely just producing all the time. But you also will know people who just consume all the time. They absolutely do nothing, and they're just always consuming. And now, of course, there's a bad reputation. I think that the consumer maybe gets more than the producer, but I think that both extremes are bad. You need to be somewhere in the middle, I would say, for maximal meaning, because both arguments are correct. Many consumers, if you think of them as hedonists, will say, well, why would you produce anything? Why would you work? That stuff is hard. and you've got to enjoy your life. You might not live, for another day, so you've got to enjoy your life, right? And it's a valid argument. And then most producers will say, well, there's absolutely zero meaning in just consuming. I need to maximize the amount of footprint that I have on helping the world or whatever, or maximizing, money or product or whatever it would be, right? And both of them have a valid argument, but they're also both wrong. The hedonist is wrong because you don't ever actually end up doing anything which has substantial meaning towards your life. Because, of course, if you're just consuming all the time, you cannot provide meaning to anything because you're just consuming. You physically don't have the time to do anything. And along with that, consumption is a present moment thing. And so you've probably heard me use the word hedonist at the same time. It's a very, very hedonistic approach, consumption, let's say, because there's generally not any hard work to do with it. It's an immediate moment thing to feel better, or to have a little bit of dopamine, or to enjoy the moment that you're in, etc. Right? And again, there are important places for that, as I'm saying. But then also, the producer, if they are just purely producing every second of their life, they will never have time of relaxing with the family, let's say. Because when you're relaxing with the family, which I think is one of the most important things that you can do in your life, that is not producing, and so they are not at the extreme, right? And so what you need to be is somewhere in the middle, and you need to choose where in the middle you want to be. You can be more skewed towards a producer, but then of course end up consuming the things that you might decide are important, like watching one of those new films that you like, or watching a TV show, or going out with your friends, or whatever it would be. That is a form of consumption because it's basically just enjoyment of the moment, and there is indeed a place for that. Or you can be slightly more skewed towards a consumer, right? You might wake up every morning and you might, indulge in particular things like going on your phone, or even stuff like reading the news is technically consumption, or even just eating something that is more consumatory as opposed to beneficial for your long-term health or whatever. But then after doing that few hours of consumption, you might end up then doing a job which is indeed producing, but maybe not as much as if it was maximized so that you were working all day, let's say. And so you've got to find your place on that scale for the overall benefit. As indeed here, this story about this little red hen, we will indeed continue. We see that the characters we have, the majority of them, as we will continue now, are purely consumers. Like, they're very much on the extreme. But the little red hen is in between. That's the key, right? The little red hen is not a maximal producer because, as it mentioned in the story, she went back to rest. Anyway, let us continue. So, the wheat existed because she had chosen to act when it had been easier to rest. So that's the choice of production for a particular moment of the day, choosing to do some creation for the world. The next morning she asked, "Who will help me separate the grain from the stalks?" "Not I, not I, not I," the three animals said. "Then I will," said the hen, and so she worked once again to do such a thing. "Who will help me carry the grain to the mill?" Once more, the dog, the cat, and the duck refused, and so the hen carried it herself. When the grain had been ground into flour, she returned to the kitchen. "Who will help me mix the flour, water, and salt?" The dog was busy watching birds, the cat was sleeping, and the duck was eating something he had found beside the pond. "Not I," they each replied. "Then I will," said the hen. She mixed the ingredients and kneaded the dough. It was difficult work. She placed it in a bowl and waited. In time, the dough began to rise. The dog smelled it and came closer. The cat climbed down from the window, and the duck left the pond and entered the kitchen. "What are you making?" they asked. "Bread," said the little red hen. Their eyes widened. "Who will help me place it in the oven?" she asked. The animals looked at the hot oven. "Not I," said the dog. "Not I," said the cat. "Not I," said the duck. "Then I will," said the hen. She placed the dough inside. Soon, the smell of warm bread filled the entire farmhouse. It passed through the kitchen, travelled beneath the doors, and drifted across the garden. The dog sat beside the table, the cat appeared with a plate, and the duck brought a knife. At last, the hen removed the golden loaf from the oven. "Who will help me eat this bread?" she asked. "I will," cried the dog. "I will," said the cat. "And I will," shouted the duck. The little red hen looked at them. For a moment, she considered eating the entire loaf herself. After all, she had planted the wheat. She had watered it, harvested it, carried it, prepared it, and baked it. They had chosen comfort at every stage. Why should they receive the result? But then the hen thought more deeply. The purpose of bread was not only to be made, it was also to be eaten. Creation without enjoyment would be incomplete, and a meal eaten entirely alone would not be as meaningful as a meal shared. So the hen cut the loaf into 4 pieces. But before giving the others their share, she said, "You may eat this bread with me today, but you must understand something. You wanted the result without participating in the process. You wanted to consume what someone else had created while offering nothing in return. There is nothing wrong with eating the bread. There is nothing wrong with resting beneath a tree, sitting beside a window, or floating across a pond. But if everyone only rested, there would eventually be no bread. There would be no houses, no stories, no songs, no farms, and no warm places in which to rest. Everything we enjoy exists because someone somewhere first chose to create it." The animals lowered their heads. The hen continued, "A good life does not mean working every moment. We create so that life can be enjoyed. But we must not spend our lives consuming what others have made while refusing to create anything ourselves. Each of us should contribute something, and after contributing, each of us may rest and enjoy what has been built. Or in other words, after making something, or creating something, or producing something, you can then consume something." The animals understood. They sat together and ate the warm bread. It tasted better than anything they had eaten before, but the hen noticed that it tasted different to her than it did to the others. They enjoyed its flavor. She enjoyed it too. But she also tasted the field, the work, the patience, and the many small choices that had brought the bread into existence. The following morning, the hen found several more grains of wheat. She carried them to the others and asked, "Who will help me plant these?" The dog stood up. "I will dig the soil." The duck stepped forward. "I will carry the water." The cat stretched and said, "I will keep the birds away from the seeds." Together they walked towards the field. They still rested. They still played. They still enjoyed the other things creatures had made. But from that day onward, they also made sure that the farm was better because they had lived upon it. And when the next loaf of bread was finally placed upon the table, every animal could taste more than bread. They could taste their own contribution. And so, well, as we talk throughout the story, it's very much hitting the nail on the head, purely focusing maybe more on the consumatory side and finding the balance in the middle, as opposed to the negatives of overproduction, let's say, which of course the negatives are that the person producing most likely will not have as meaningful a life as if they had some sort of consumption there. But the moral is that there is nothing wrong with consuming per se. We need to have rest. We need to have entertainment. We need to have beauty. We need to have stories. We need to have every single creation of other people. That's in fact why the economy is as it is. But a life spent only consuming eventually will become empty. Now this is key, because in the age of AI, there will be more than you can possibly imagine to consume. And as we've talked about today, that will lead to pure emptiness and meaninglessness in your life if you only spend your time consuming. Like we've talked about before, you have to pick up your cross and bear it. You have to take on responsibility for something. And that is the act of producing. You don't have to go and make bread for the world. That is something you could do. But you could make metaphorical bread, going out there, helping your community. You are producing something for other people to enjoy. So go out there, create something, help someone, build something that did not exist before, and then enjoy the world without guilt, because you have also added something to it.